What's good, everybody? It's Lufus James here with Mike. Mike, what's going on, man?
Chilling, chilling.
Man, it's finally here. We are literally, from this exact time, 24 hours away from seeing Pigskin get kicked into the fall air for football.
It's a nice feeling, ain't it?
It sure is. It sure is. And we had one heck of a draft in our league on Labor Day. It was crazy. It was long, almost 3 hours long, but everybody
Man, it
put
seemed
it.
like it was longer than that by the time everybody got done making their picks. Seemed like it was pushing the 3.5. Wouldn't you say?
It was definitely a test of mental endurance. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Trying not to sit back too long for a player while at the same time trying to make sure that you paid the right value for the player you might have been reaching for or not. And it was crazy. A lot of mathematical strategy, money management, trying to make sure people wasn't getting away with, superstar lineups. It was competitive.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it for sure.
So as you can see, everybody, if you didn't get the notification earlier this week, Mike did this draft grade article, and he basically broke down every single team and their best pick, their worst pick, their potential strategy when they were going into the draft, and how it could shape out as far as going into week one. And Mike, you did an amazing job on that.
But I appreciate it. I uh, I don't know. Like when I started looking at my own team, right after the draft, started considering strengths and weaknesses, and I thought that it might be useful, right, for everybody to kind of have some feedback to work with. So I asked you about it. It seemed like you felt the same way, and I started writing.
It's greatly appreciated. It's gotten a lot of great feedback from the other owners in the league, especially Dirty Landry. Dirty Landry loved the fact that he was the only A team. You know, even though I think his team has kind of proven before, it might start out as an A, but it starts getting weaker and then it finishes as a C, as what
Well,
happened last year.
see, that's the thing about it, though, right? That was definitely part of the evaluation.
Hmm.
Um, every team that we looked at, right? As I went through all the way down the rosters in alphabetical order, everybody got evaluated not only based on how their team looked coming out of the draft, but whether or not I expected their picks to hold up. I forget who it was that whoever they drafted as their starting running backs. I want to say it might have been either Reasonable Doubt or Macaroni Tony. They're starting running backs for like Tevin Coleman and somebody else. And when I looked at their roster, I think they had, you know what, now that I say I might be crossing over two teams' picks. But there was one team, right, who had Eddie Lacy and Terrence West on the bench. And right now, Terrence West plays for the Ravens, and their offense hasn't been that great, but he's basically the only running back there. And Eddie Lacy is possibly the most talented running back in Seattle, if he's not the most athletic. And so I looked at their roster, and their running back position was so weak. It was like, I mean, this could work, but at the same time, it's just as likely that the two running backs that start off the season on the bench might be the ones that get them into the playoffs. And so everybody, Landry included, was evaluated based on whether or not I expected their um, original starters to survive the season, right? You can. I'm sure you've read it by now. I didn't spare anybody that scrutiny.
Right.
Landry's team, man, they look pretty solid from top to bottom, at least going into the year.
And remember, folks, you go to the league page, at least for this week, you will see that the link is located right on the home screen if you go log on a computer. If you go into the league messages, either via the fantasy football app or on the side of the league page here, you see you can click on the draft grades link, and then you can click on the article that Mike posted. There's a link right there as well. Uh, Speaking of the draft, there's a couple things I noticed during the draft that kind of want to point out real quick. Um, and Mike, you let me know what you think. All right.
All
One thing
right.
I one thing I noticed. Here's the top 5 takeaways that I got from the draft. Number one, nothing but heart will always police the draft with his last second bids. Don't you get sick of that?
I do, and I hope that one day somebody will leave you hanging high and dry with a player you didn't really want. But that guy is in every draft, right? Somebody who's just not going to let you get away with a bargain. Um, and I guess it serves a purpose.
Well, I don't know that guy that everybody's talking about with nothing but heart that always pleased the draft, but I mean, he's just. If I had to guess what he's thinking, I'm assuming that he's just trying to make sure that people go for at least the right range of value.
Well, yeah, sure, fine. But one of the first rules of auction draft is to never nominate a bid that you wouldn't be willing to accept, right? And I just don't believe that whoever that guy is would be willing to pay the amount of money he bids for all of these players trying to check other people. Well, I guess we won't get another chance to find out until next
It will definitely be another 11, at least 11 month and 30-day wait before we ever find that out again. Number
year.
two on my list is the Emerald City Kings got Zeke and Darren McFadden just to tick off Cowboys fans because he knows he don't have any love for Cowboys fans. He just did it in spite of.
I mean, his team name literally has the word Emerald City in it, right? He's obviously a Seahawks fan, and he's only trying to be obnoxious because he's from Dallas. I know the guy, and so it will be interesting to see if he has to swallow those picks. Because even though I know Zeke somehow managed to not get his suspension commuted and still find himself on the field week one, it's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out.
It sure
Will
is.
be
It
will
sure.
be very unfortunate if that 6-week suspension hit for the Planet Fantasy playoff.
And he definitely be looking like, oh snap.
Right, right.
number
The
three,
court. Go ahead.
number three takeaway I got was silent but deadly will always find some random name nobody knows to be on his team. I mean, really, Young Ho Koo. I never heard about him. Did you?
Nah, I ain't never heard of Young Ho. But I have seen some interesting Korean names. And so if I had to bet money on it, I would assume this is a Korean guy. And based on the backflip, like goalpost bouncing trick shot video that Silent but Deadly posted, I'm sure their team will be just fine.
Number four takeaway I got was Macaroni Tony is not sneaky at all when drafted. I mean, he really tried to sit there and get Matt Ryan to go with Julio Jones, ODB, and Travis Kelsey. Now, he was quick to point out the person that got Aaron Rodgers to make sure he don't get Jordy Nelson. But he just don't think that's going to slide of him trying to get Matt Ryan and Julio. No, not happening.
Well, see, he's a time hater, is what he is. He has a deep haterific tradition, right? That goes back into his bloodline at least 2-3 generations. So he can't help himself. He'll be all right. He'll be all right.
In other words, the player hate his ball, hate, 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 hate.
Hey.
And my number five takeaway, my biggest takeaway from the draft, the Cougars were the main culprit for price gouging wideouts. He was probably linked to the gas apocalypse that happened in Dallas last weekend.
Well, I mean, I saw one image, one GIF or whatever online of a guy trying to trade sexual favors for gallons of gas. So I'm sure people will do anything for their receivers.
Oh Lord, yeah. I mean, and it kind of puts it in perspective since their first name is Wide, than last name receivers. Anyway, we're moving on in this podcast. And now we're going to break down the week one matchups. And it's week one. Everybody's excited. Drafts is over finally. And we got some pretty key matchups here. You know, the way the scheduling system sets up, they usually try to put some exciting week one matchups, couple divisional opponents, couple of rivals, a couple, just to see where everyone stands week one. And the first matchup we're going to look into is the Thursday night game per se, which is the Dusters versus Nothing But Heart. And these two go way back. Nothing But Heart had an amazing season back in 2012, but it got derailed because the Dusters drafted arguably the best team ever assembled from top to bottom from week one all the way to the championship game.
Yeah, but I mean, history is what rivalries are made of, right? Like, that's probably a good thing.
Yes, it is. Looking at the matches real quick, it's kind of straightforward. I mean, you can tell that the quarterback, obviously, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, running back play definitely favors the Dusters. Wide receivers, a little bit more for the Nothing But Heart, even though there's a lot of upside potential with the Dusters. Tight end position is pretty solid. Gronkowski, obviously, we know his massive upside when he's on the field and healthy, while Greg Olsen is more of the safer option per se. He won't get you the 25 or 30 that Gronk will, but he won't get you less than 8 or 10 on every week, you know. And then a couple
Yeah.
and then a couple of sneaky like streamer plays at defense with the Rams D going against Scott Tolzien and the Panthers D going against Brian Hoyer. What do you think about this matchup?
I think this matchup is probably going to come down to which one of the tight ends, right, can abuse their matchup the most, just because these two rosters are puzzle pieces. So Dusters are a little stronger at running back. The Nothing But Heart is probably a little stronger at receiver, probably more than a little strong at receiver. And Aaron Rodgers, while he's projected to have 25 points this week, and Carson Wentz is projected to only have 20, you got to kind of respect Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the Washington secondary frightens anybody. So really, I see this matchup as kind of a toss-up, right, between which tight end comes out of the gate and is going to give his team a 10 or 15-point advantage. And that should be where this game turns.
And that's the thing about it. Even though Aaron Rodgers was the best quarterback in fantasy last year, I mean, he's going against a defensive line that just got Sheldon Richardson. They was already at some points putting Aaron Rodgers on his back.
Right, and Rodgers just lost. He lost T.J. Lang and a tackle, right?
He sure did.
He lost 2 starting offensive linemen this year. So while you can never count him out, this is going to be a challenge for him early in the season for sure.
The key thing for me to watch in this game is, or at least in this matchup, is the fact of this is the one of the rare matchups in this week's set of matchups, as I said, where the teams will literally have to have the game be played out all the way from Thursday night at 7:30 to Monday night at God knows what time that game will end, your time. So, because both teams has players all the way throughout. So it's going to be one of those games where it's like, you might be able to see who might have, an advantage as far as point wise, but you can never count the game out just because of the fact that it will not end till at least midnight. Midnight Monday night.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like that's why we want to play fantasy. Nobody likes to watch one team get all of the points they're going to get while the other team's players haven't played yet, and the second team then slowly but surely try to see if they can catch up one game at a time. It kind of takes some of the shine off the fantasy experience. We want to see the back and forth, right? We want to see a team struggle. We want to see multiple lead changes. Gives you somebody to root for. Makes it easier to invest in our players, for sure.
It sure does. My pick for this game is that Nothing But Heart crushes the Dusters. What's your pick on this game, Mike?
I don't see a crushing happen here, honestly, because Nothing But Heart and the Dusters have a history of intense matchups, and I don't see any roster position that's gonna lead to change that, right? So I don't know. It'll be a good game for sure.
It'll definitely be a good game. And by the way, I was just smack talking. I know the game against the Dusters, Nothing But Heart. I know he goes from having an afro to being bald from pulling his hair out. So it definitely be a good intense matchup. Going to the next one, we have Macaroni Tony versus Hunter Hearst Henry, formerly known
Formerly known as Dirty Landry.
formerly known as Dirty Landry. We look at the preview here. ESPN got a .6 advantage going to Hunter Hearst Henry. This one they have slated to be very close.
And I am actually inclined to disagree. I'm inclined to disagree. In light of the fact that Macaroni Tony has got Tevin Coleman and Robert Kelly starting at running back, and the fact that Ben Roethlisberger is in an away game, I think this matchup actually has the potential to get ugly this week.
It does. And one thing to take note is that Hurricane Irma is a serious thing, and due to necessary precautions, the Miami and Tampa Bay game had to be adjusted to Week 11. They will not be playing Week 1. Therefore, Macaroni Tony would have had Jarvis Landry in there as their number 3 wide receiver. But because they're on the bye, they made a late switch for Sterling Shepard. Having 2 Giants receivers going up against that Cowboys secondary, is that a good call? Because I ain't going to lie to you. The Cowboys secondary, that Hall of Fame game, not preseason 1, not preseason 2, not preseason 3. I'm talking about that Hall of Fame game. All 4 of them was starting, and they were starting against Drew Stanton in Arizona, and he was carving them up.
Yeah. The Cowboys secondary isn't exactly scaring anybody, but and it's a big but, right? You gotta also hope that Odell Beckham Jr. is his normal self, right? Because if teams know that they don't have to respect Odell in the same way if they smell blood in the water, that's definitely going to affect their scheme. It's going to affect the way that they defend the pass, even by the second quarter. And further, regardless of who they have at the flex, there should not have been any question, right? Beckham, Jones, Kelsey should have been the end of this discussion. But they waited so late at running back, and I mentioned this in the draft guide. Tevin Coleman and Robert Kelly have a lot to prove to me, and that's why I think this matchup could get bad. It might be fine. It might be fine. I don't think it's going to be close like ESPN expects it to be. The only potential vulnerability I see for Hunter Hearst Henry is the fact that we don't know which Kevin White is going to show up. That's the only question I see in this matchup. Because if let's say that was Jarvis Landry on the Hunter Hearst Henry side, I would be calling for a blowout. It's just that if Kevin White puts up a goose egg or does something terrible, and Macaroni Tony actually can bring their A game, this might actually be close.
That's another thing about it. Hunter Hearst Henry is also affected by the decision of Miami Tampa Bay moving to Week 11 because they had Mike Evans, and that might have played a big deal in this matchup.
Mike Evans and I will be calling this the blowout of the week. if Hunter Hearst Henry had Mike Evans starting instead of Kevin White, the blowout of the week, huge embarrassing blowout.
My key matchup to watch in this game, Mike, is the Atlanta Falcons. And here's why. Because the Atlanta Falcons will play Chicago in Chicago. Don't know how the weather's going to be like yet, but if the Falcons offense can pick up where they left off last year, the fact that Matt Ryan will be throwing to Julio, Mohamed Sanu, but Macaroni Tony also got Tevin Coleman. And remember, Tevin Coleman for a while, he got a lot of his off of catching the ball. So if Matt Ryan has a big day, it's got to go to one of those guys. Sometimes both. And so really, Hunter Hearst Henry, to me, has the better balanced squad, even though they have to start Kevin White. But if Matt Ryan starts throwing that ball around to Julio and Tevin, it could be a long day on that side.
Well, and see, that's the thing, right? Like if you are the Atlanta Falcons coach and you are trying to draw up your game plan against the Chicago Bears, is your plan going to be to throw it to the running back to kind of try to set up the pass with the screenplay? Or is your plan going to be to apply pressure to the opposing quarterback and run that ball?
Right.
So I know what my plan would be. What's the man's name? Dan Quinn?
Yeah.
If I was Dan Quinn, I would say Devontae Freeman is getting 30 touches this week, and 25 of them are going to be between the tackles. Chicago's going to have to take the ball from me because I know their quarterback can't play. Right?
You talking about Mitch Trubisky.
Right. You get Julio Jones a touchdown. You play some possession ball control with your tight end, and you run the ball. You don't let them have it. This is an easy win for Atlanta if they just play some traditional ball control. And so I don't see where checkdowns and dump offs and screen plays factor into that game plan. I don't think Chicago can apply that kind of pressure up front to make it necessary.
I feel you on that. Who you got in this one, Mike?
I got Triple H, man. I got Hunter Hearst Henry for sure.
Triple H over Tony. I agree with you. I also have Triple H over Tony. Moving on to the next matchup, we have the Valerian Steelers against the Houston Shadows. A couple of Game of Thrones references here.
Yeah.
This is an intriguing matchup. Both have running back situations. Is a little interesting. Both are relying on a team per se. Shadows relying on Houston and Oakland pretty hard, while the Steelers are relying on the Dallas Cowboys pretty hard. What do you think about this matchup?
I think if we're judging by talent, right, this matchup distinctly favors the Houston Shadows, and it's according to the projections, ESPN seems to agree with me. But at the same time, it's the beginning of a new year. So as soon as the ball is kicked off, our projections don't mean a whole lot. You look a level deeper. DeAndre Hopkins is coming off a minor injury. Lamar Miller hasn't yet proven himself. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Ty Gurley. And the Valerian Steelers, right, they do have Tom Brady going up against a aging but effective Kansas City defense. I think this matchup is going to be close, and I think that it is going to turn on whether Ty Gurley or Bilal Powell plays a better football game.
Well, the one thing that's very interesting about this game is that the Steelers roster is they're safe picks, right? Good high floors, maybe not high ceiling players. Whereas the Shadows they're pretty much all on the bounce back train. You know what I'm saying? Everybody on their roster, but Derek Carr, and even though Derek Carr had that nasty fibula injury, he's or his ACL, whatever it was that put him out, he was on his way to being in the discussion for MVP. So you got high floors, maybe low ceilings, versus huge bounce back potential.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing. Fantasy is about talent and opportunity. And I see a whole lot of that on the Shadow side.
I feel that the key matchup to watch for here is the defenses. Both defenses are ranked basically 1 and 2 coming into this year, but both defenses are facing some offenses that can score and score quickly. So it's very tempting
Yeah.
to see how those defenses will play out because we know defenses in this league you start out with 20 points. You know, it's very tempting to see how the defenses will hold up with only having 4.5, 5 weeks while playing limited and going up against these high-profile offensive teams in the Packers and the Chargers. That's my matchup to watch. Who you got winning this one?
I think this week I'm going to go ahead and take. I don't know. This is tougher than it looks. I'm going to take the Shadows just because I don't have a lot of faith to walk away with the win this week.
Mike got Shadows over Steelers. I too have the Shadows over the Steelers, but in a very close game though. I think closer than people might give it. Next
Yeah, this
matchup.
should be a good one to watch for sure.
It should be a good one. Next one to look at is two teams that had not very successful seasons last year, looking to start off on the right foot. London Knights and Silent but Deadly. Now, London Knights do have to make some changes at quarterback and running back. Jameis Winston and Jay Ajayi, which does make a big deal. Let's take a look. Let's see if I can look at their full box score to see who they got on the bench. Let's see here. That could be potential replacements. They got Wendell Smallwood, P. Ryan, Burton Bernard, Charles to replace Jay Ajayi. They might be in trouble this week.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. Our little game of fantasy football doesn't really mean anything in a situation where a entire state is about to be covered by a Category 5 hurricane. But where the matchup is concerned, I don't really see how the Knights recover here, to be honest. Not to bust anybody's bubble, but Joe Flacco's out there in the free agent pool.
Yeah.
Sam Bradford is out there, and nobody's really that frightened of New Orleans pass rush or their cornerbacks. I don't want Alex Smith against New England. I definitely don't want Trevor Siemian against anybody. But the Knights have some options, I guess, at quarterback. None of them inspire a whole lot of faith. It'll be a pickup to give them a fighting chance, but don't be surprised if this one gets sloppy.
Real quickly, I just want to make sure that everyone pays attention in this matchup to the wide receiver position. All 5 receivers that'll be in this game, and maybe 6 depending on what happens in the next couple of days with Silent but Deadly's roster. But all 5 wide receivers they kind of have a chip on their shoulder per se. Michael Thomas, number 1 receiver in New Orleans. Terrell Pryor Sr. coming off a big year. Was it a fluke or not? Allen Robinson needs to bounce back, or else he might be in trouble with his contract situation. T.Y. Hilton with no Andrew Luck. That's a big thing to watch. And A.J. Green, he wants to prove that he's still something after coming off that injury. Wide receiver position here, not for just this week, but for the future. Got to pay attention in this matchup.
Well, and it's funny that you say that because now that you mention it, the London Knights' best hope to win this week is probably that Allen Robinson has a very, very big week 1 against Houston, which is a tough ask. But as of today, for some reason, Silent but Deadly still has Darren Sproles in their flex spot. And I have respect for him as an athlete and as a professional. I certainly wouldn't suggest that he doesn't deserve his roster spot in real life. But I have questions about how reliable, especially in week 1 where everybody's supposed to be healthy, the second or third string passing down running back for Philly can be.
Right.
Like, would 4 catches for 20 yards surprise anybody?
Nope.
And now it might be 4 catches for 20 yards and a touchdown, in which case that's great production from your flex spot. But then again, it might be 4 catches for 12 yards and nothing, no carries, right? So it seems sketchy, especially when he's lined up across from the number 1 receiver on a bad team.
That is true. I don't think we need to spend any more time on this matchup. I think we both agree that we know who's going to win this one, silent but deadly.
Yeah, that's how it looks.
Come up to the next matchup. And this matchup here, the Cougars versus the Thunder.
Yeah. This one. It might not be that bad, man. It might be different than it looks, right? ESPN only has the split at 4.1. But man, this could be rough. This could be real rough. Devontae Adams against Seattle. Emmanuel Sanders against the Chargers. And Golden Tate matching up with Patrick Peters. That's a tall ask, bro.
His receivers definitely does not have good matchups. But he kind of makes up for it with the running back and quarterback spot, though.
Does he?
Well, I mean, David Johnson and Kareem Hunt. No. Well, we don't know nothing about Kareem Hunt yet. So it's all speculation and hoopla. But at the same time, he's going in as the number one. So therefore, if he does fine, he'll get volume, even though he's going against Belichick. I hate.
So you telling me that you think that the Thunder can rely on Kareem Hunt to help float their team week 1 against Bill Belichick in New England? Is that what you telling me?
I'm telling you that Alex Smith averages less than 8 yards per pass attempt. If Kareem Hunt catches just a couple of those and wiggles a little bit, he might be able to at least make himself reasonable. I'm not saying he's going to have a top 10 running back performance, but everybody has to start at least 2 in this 12 team. So 24 running backs. I'm saying he can be at least a top 20.
So you're telling me that you think that this running back is going to be able to receive his way into relevance?
Potentially.
Against the Patriots in New England the first week of the season?
Potentially. It's almost like one team that Nothing But Heart faced about 5 or 6 years ago, where it was Broncos versus Chargers, when it was like actually flipped. The Chargers defense was a whole lot better than the Broncos defense, but a running back, some white boy, I forget his name, maybe it was Peyton Hillis, got like 10 or 15 catches in the last 2 drives of the game to win the game.
Yeah, man, but I feel you, but I think that's a bridge too far, bro. I think
it is a bridge too far. It is a bridge. Nothing But Heart's a little salty about that, so you have to excuse him for a second there, because that game literally was who the Thunder had, and for some reason the Thunder have an uncanny ability of catching running backs that come back from 30 down to win a game by 0.8. Anyway, I digress. The Cougars, I mean, the Cougars got the favorable matchups. I mean, Dalvin Cook against New Orleans, Amir Abdullah against Arizona. This is sure volume. Hopefully, he doesn't break a kneecap or a leg or something. I mean, Kelvin Benjamin against San Francisco. Who they got at corner in San Fran? I mean, I'll wait. Antonio Brown against.
They haven't had San Francisco hasn't had a cornerback since not Buchanan. What's that little short kid's name? I can't even remember. The last cornerback they had, whose name I know was Dre Bly. And if you can think about how long ago that was.
Lord Jesus.
Remember Dre Bly used to play for the Lions? Yeah, that's the last cornerback they had whose name I could remember. Now, I feel like in the back of my mind they picked up some youngsters in the draft either last year or the year before who were supposed to have some talent, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet.
Sugarland Cougars was one of the teams who I said was an early favorite in my review of the draft to be at the top of the league quickly. I don't know if this is going to be a blowout, but I don't see how the Thunder can overcome all of the matchup differences.
Well, the Thunder has a 4-point advantage on the line against the Cougars, but I think you and I both agree we got the Cougars beating the Thunder on this one.
Yeah, and I expect it to be by more than 4 points.
Going to our last matchup, Reasonable Doubt versus Emerald City Kings, and this one right here is my upset special because the Emerald City Kings has always been a solid team throughout, but I look over there at Reasonable Doubt's team, and I really feel like they can sneak into beating the Kings to start out this year, even though they do have Jonathan Stewart out there running back.
Yeah, and I mean, upset special is a good word for it, right? ESPN has the split at 1.5 points. As far as ESPN is concerned, this game is going to be very, very close, right?
Right.
With that being said, uh, well, you know what? The big factor that we just can't ignore for Emerald City Kings is that Zeke Elliott is going to play. And man, he's playing the Giants this week. He might. And I don't mean any disrespect to what's the Giants coach McAdoo.
Yep.
I don't mean any disrespect to coach, but I don't know if they can stop him. And Christian McCaffrey is going to be the pass catching back on a team that's having trouble protecting their quarterback, right? So I expect him to catch 4, maybe 6 passes this game. I don't know what he's going to do with them, but that's a few points, and I don't know. It's hard for me to make a confident call on this one. So I like this as the upset special. I'm just not really sure who's being upset.
Yeah, the potential is there because if you look at each position, you have who who has the high ceiling, but who has a safe floor. You know what I'm saying? Drew Brees, high ceiling. Carson Palmer, safe floor. Jordan Howard, high ceiling. Ezekiel Elliott, safe floor. Jonathan Stewart, Christian McCaffrey. That's to me that's the key right there. If you go down every matchup, that's the key. If Christian McCaffrey is out there first, or it's probably and no one Ron Rivera, it's probably gonna be Jonathan Stewart first. And if Jonathan Stewart ain't doing what he needs to do early, we might see Christian McCaffrey a whole lot more sooner than probably what the original game plan was going to call for. And if that's the case, that could spell trouble in the long run very early in the season.
Well, absolutely. And further, I think that the projections, right, from both of them this week are kind of a good baseline expectation for what we can get to see for the rest of the season. ESPN expects Jonathan Stewart to get 9.6, but they expect Christian McCaffrey to get 13.4. And you know why that is? It's because we're going to PPR lift.
Exactly.
Right? And so even if the split is 60-40, 65-35 in Jonathan Stewart's favor for carries, Christian McCaffrey has to catch the ball one time to account for 10 of Jonathan Stewart's yards with his feet.
Right.
So that's a matchup tilting factor, and it might tell the story of the Panthers' offense in real life. But I gotta disagree with you on what the key matchup is because I think it's Jordan Reed versus Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I think that the Saints are going to get out to a lead, and they're going to try to get Kyle Rudolph the ball. But I think that Jordan Reed is just part of the plan, right?
Right.
Like no matter what's going on, something's wrong if he doesn't get 10 targets. If Jordan Reed does what he is supposed to do, I expect his production to be the reason why the Kings can beat Reasonable Doubt.
Mike has a tight end position as the position to watch. I have the running back slot with Jonathan Stewart and Christian McCaffrey as a position to watch. Mike, who you got in this one? I got Doubt over Kings in a very, very close one.
Give me the Kings.
We have our first discrepancy of the year as Mike takes the Kings over Doubt, and I take the Doubt over Kings. So to recap our picks, we both are facing each other this week, so therefore we won't be picking, but we just hope for a very good game between two very good owners. We got Triple H over Macaroni Tony, Houston Shadows over the Valerian Steelers. The Silent but Deadly over the London Knights. The Sugarland Cougars over the Thunder. And reasonable doubt over. Well, I have reasonable doubt over the Kings, and Mike has Kings over reasonable doubt.
Well, and if you'll allow me, I'll tell you why. Right? It's only like second or third level analysis. When I look at the Emerald City Kings, I see quarterbacks that are in a position to succeed. When I look at the reasonable doubt, I see quarterbacks that are in a position to face a challenge. Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen are receiving passes from Derek Carr and Phillip Rivers. And while I expect Keenan Allen to be challenged by the likes of Chris Harris, I think he's the kind of guy who's going to make his hay underneath, right? I'm expecting like 6, maybe 7 catches for him, 40 to 60 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he gets lucky and one of those is a touchdown. I don't think anybody in Tennessee secondary is a threat to Derek Carr. And I think that Eric Decker is going to be force-fed, right? So even if Mariota doesn't have a great game, I think it's going to be a 50-50 split for targets between Delaney Walker and Eric Decker in Tennessee. Looking at the other side, I'll give Crabtree his matchup at Tennessee. I expect him to have a good game, but they are going to beat the hell out of Jordy Nelson.
Yeah.
Jordy is a year older. Seattle is still aggressive. Martavis Bryant, fine, but he's the number 2 target. Ben doesn't really perform as well on the road as he does at home. And Cleveland is supposedly coming out of the gate with a vengeance with all of these new adjustments they've made on defense. So there's more uncertainty over there, right? And that's why I picked the way that I did.
Right. You went with the more of the safe upside than the potential.
Right. Like, unless you're going to call the Denver game a blowout, not having seen any of the teams play a full game with all of the starters, I think that there's more safety and, frankly, more talent on the Kings side of the ball.
That is very true. Well, that's it. We have went over the week 1 previews for our teams. Remember to always check the league page for any potential articles that's posted by either myself or Mike. Also, any page that is updated will be sent over to the league messages. As you can see, you can still see all of the top 12 CHFFL team analysis from the previous year. They're all there. So, Mike, it's exciting times. I feel like a kid on Christmas Eve, just waiting to unwrap that football present of Patriots and Chiefs tomorrow, and then we really get it going on Sunday.
Oh yeah, man, it's good to be back in the season. This ought to be a great weekend.
It ought to be. All right, well, there you have it. We'll come back again next week. I might do a brief little recap show of the matchups, just basically pointing out the top performer and the low performer, and then basically saying how the game went briefly. It won't be a long video at all. I can't do a long video without my partner, Big Mike. So, but we'll have that, and then we'll get ready for week 2, along with any major transactions, as the first real big waiver wire week will happen. It might happen this week, even with the Miami Dolphin